Did you know that a single medical diversion, landing a massive Boeing 777 halfway across the Atlantic because a passenger has fallen ill, costs an airline between $50,000 and $200,000? But that's just money. As a lead flight attendant for over 12 years, I wasn't worried about the airline's checkbook. I was worried about the person in 4C. I've held the hands of world travelers who thought they were fine to fly, only to watch their oxygen levels plummet or their heart rhythm falter before we even reached cruising altitude. Most people think of flying as a commute, but for the human body, especially as we cross the threshold of 70, flying is a high-altitude endurance sport. The air is thinner, the pressure is lower, and the stress is higher than almost any other environment on Earth. Today, I'm putting aside my service with a small persona to give you the truth you won't hear from a travel agent. I'm Elena, your senior travel consultant and former lead flight attendant. I've seen the near misses that never make the news. If you, or someone you love, exhibit even one of the 5 signs we're discussing today, your next flight shouldn't be a plane. It should be a pivot. I'm not here to take away your freedom. I'm here to make sure your golden years aren't spent in an emergency room in a city where you don't speak the language. Let's get into the galley talk. In the industry, we call the galley our sanctuary. It's where the crew goes to vent, to troubleshoot, and to tell the truth. So, let's have some galley talk. When you step onto a plane, you aren't just sitting in a chair for 4 hours. You're entering a pressurized tube that is being kept artificially at an altitude equivalent to about 8,000 feet. Imagine standing on the peak of a mountain in the Rockies. That is what your heart and lungs are dealing with the entire time you're watching an in-flight movie. For a 30-year-old, the body compensates for that thinner air without much fuss, but biology and physics eventually have a reckoning. After age 70, the pulmonary reserve, your body's backup tank of oxygen, naturally begins to shrink. I remember a flight from Dallas to London. We had a lovely gentleman, Henry, who was 74. He looked fit, he was sharp, and he was excited for his granddaughter's graduation, but 45 minutes after takeoff, Henry started looking gray. Not pale, gray. When I checked his pulse oximeter, he was at 84%. In a hospital, that's an emergency. On a plane, it's a crisis. Henry's body simply couldn't extract enough oxygen from the pressurized cabin air to keep his heart happy. We spent 6 hours hovering over him with Medlink on the radio and a portable oxygen bottle tucked under his seat. He made it, but he spent the first 3 days of his trip in a London hospital instead of at the graduation. That's the problem no one talks about. The airline industry wants you to buy the ticket. The gate agent wants you on the plane on time, but they aren't the ones who will be performing CPR at 35,000 feet. I was. And I'm telling you, the sky is an unforgiving place for a body that is already struggling on the ground. I spent 12 years wearing those wings. I've worked the red-eyes, the holiday rushes, and the long-haul trans-Pacific routes. I've managed crews of 15 and cabins of 300. I've dealt with everything from engine failures to celebrities having meltdowns in first class. People ask me why I transitioned from being a lead flight attendant to a senior travel consultant. The answer is simple. I got tired of seeing people endure travel rather than enjoy it. As a flight attendant, my job was reactive. If you fainted, I grabbed the AED. If you were confused, I tried to calm you down. But as a consultant for the 60-plus community, my job is proactive. I am now your shield. The travel industry has become increasingly hostile towards seniors, narrower seats, digital-only check-ins, and hubs that require a mile-long sprint between gates. It's designed for a 22-year-old with a backpack and a smartphone. My 12 years in the air taught me how to spot a medical event before it happens. I can look at the way a passenger walks down the jet bridge and tell you if they're going to have a problem over the Atlantic. I've developed a sixth sense for the subtle signs of physical and cognitive fatigue that the average person and even many doctors overlook. I'm here to give you the pre-flight briefing your doctor doesn't have the time to give. I want you to see the world, but I want you to see it with dignity and safety. Because the truth is, there are signs, clear, physical markers that tell us when the sky is no longer the limit. If you're over 70, you've earned the right to travel on your own terms, and sometimes, on your own terms means knowing when to stay grounded. Are you ready to see if you're showing the signs? Let's look at sign number 1. Let's talk about the first and perhaps most deceptive sign. I call it the gate sprint test. If you find yourself leaning against the jet bridge wall, catching your breath after the walk from the check-in counter to the gate, your body is sending you a high-priority Mayday signal. Most seniors think, oh, it's just a long walk. I'm just getting older. But here's the part the airlines hope you never find out. The air inside a plane is not the air outside. Modern aircraft, like the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, are engineering marvels. They pressurize the cabin so you don't pass out at 35,000 feet. But they don't pressurize it to sea level. They pressurize it to an altitude of 6,000 to 8,000 feet. To your heart and lungs, sitting in seat 12A is exactly like standing on a mountain peak in Mexico City or Aspen, Colorado. If you are already winded at sea level just by walking to the gate, you are starting the flight in what we call oxygen debt. Once the door closes and we level off, the partial pressure of oxygen in your blood will drop. For a healthy 20-year-old, that's a minor dip. For a 75-year-old with even mild respiratory issues, it can lead to hypoxia, a state where your brain and organs aren't getting enough fuel. I remember a flight from Chicago to Tokyo in 2014. We had a gentleman in premium economy, Mr. Abramson. He was 78, a retired engineer, sharp as a tack. During boarding, I noticed he was using the seatbacks to steady himself as he walked down the aisle. He was huffing just a bit too much for a man who had only carried a small briefcase. 2 hours into the 13-hour haul, over the Canadian wilderness, Mr. Abramson rang the call button. He wasn't gasping. He was just confused. He couldn't remember which button was for the light and which was for the attendant. When I checked his pulse, it was racing at 110 beats per minute while he was sitting perfectly still. His heart was working overtime, trying to pump what little oxygen he had left to his brain. We had to put him on supplemental oxygen for the next 11 hours. Consultant advice: before you book that flight, perform the 100-yard test. Can you walk 100 yards at a brisk pace without needing to stop or feeling a thump in your chest? If the answer is no, you shouldn't be flying without a portable oxygen concentrator and a physician's fit-to-fly certificate. From a financial perspective, failing to do this is a massive risk. If we have to divert for your respiratory distress and it's determined you had a pre-existing condition you didn't disclose, some travel insurance policies will deny your claim, leaving you with a 6-figure bill for the fuel and landing fees. The second sign isn't physical, it's cognitive. We call it terminal stress syndrome. Airports used to be places of glamour. Today, they are high-stress digital gauntlets. If you find that the new normal of travel, the QR code menus, the digital boarding passes on your phone, the automated TSA bins, leaves you feeling paralyzed or tearful, this is a sign your nervous system may no longer be equipped for the aviation environment. Aviation safety relies on situational awareness. As a lead flight attendant, I spent my entire career scanning for people who lacked it. Why? Because if there is an emergency, a cabin fire, or a sudden decompression, I need you to be able to follow commands instantly. But here is the secret: stress causes cognitive regression. When we are overwhelmed, our brain's ability to process new information shrinks. For seniors, this is magnified. If you are struggling to find your gate or understand the Group 4 boarding announcement, imagine trying to find an emergency exit in a dark, smoky cabin. In 2017, on a flight from Miami to Rio, I encountered a lovely woman named Margaret. She was traveling alone at age 82 to see her son. At the gate, she was flustered. She had lost her paper boarding pass and couldn't get her phone to wake up. The gate agent was rushing her. The crowd was sighing behind her. By the time she got to her seat, she was in a state of hyper-arousal. Halfway through the flight, Margaret wandered into the galley. She didn't know where she was. She thought she was in her kitchen at home and was looking for the kettle. This wasn't dementia. This was acute environmental disorientation. The stress of the airport had effectively short-circuited her short-term memory. I had to sit her in the jump seat next to me for 3 hours just to keep her grounded. Consultant advice: if the logistics of travel feel like a mountain you can no longer climb, don't force it. The safety implication is clear. In an evacuation, a disoriented passenger is a danger to themselves and others. Financially, missed connection insurance rarely covers "I got overwhelmed and missed the gate." If you're feeling this fog, it's time to look at concierge travel services where someone walks you hand in hand through the terminal, or perhaps it's time to consider that your adventuring days have shifted to a different, slower pace. Signs 3 and 4 go hand in hand: physical stasis and chemical timing. Sign number 3 is the balloon effect. If you finish a 2-hour car ride and your ankles look like they've been pumped with air, you are in the high-risk zone for DVT, deep vein thrombosis. Airlines hate talking about DVT because it's the silent killer of the skies. When you sit for hours in a cramped economy seat, your blood pools. If a clot forms and then breaks loose when you stand up after landing, it can travel to your lungs. This is a pulmonary embolism, and it is often fatal. If you can no longer walk the length of the cabin every hour, or if you have pitting edema, you're a walking no-fly zone until a cardiologist clears you. Sign number 4 is the medication gap. This is something I've seen ruin more trips than lost luggage. As we age, our medication windows become tighter. You take your blood pressure pill at 8 a.m., your insulin at noon, your heart medication at 6 p.m. But what happens when you cross 6 time zones? Or worse, what happens when you're stuck on a tarmac delay for 5 hours in a snowstorm with your meds tucked away in the overhead bin? I'll never forget a flight to Frankfurt in 2015. A passenger, Mrs. Gable, had her Parkinson's medication in her checked bag because it was too bulky for her purse. We sat on the tarmac for 4 hours due to a mechanical issue. By the time we took off, her window had closed. She began experiencing severe tremors and freezing episodes in the middle of the flight. We had no way to get her bag from the cargo hold. It was heartbreaking and entirely preventable. Consultant advice: if your health depends on a to-the-minute chemical balance that you find difficult to manage during a chaotic day, you shouldn't be flying long haul. The Lead Flight Attendant rule: always carry 24 hours of medication in your pocket, not your carry-on, your pocket. If you can't manage that complexity, the risk of a metabolic crash at 35,000 feet where there is no pharmacy is simply too high. We've talked about your lungs, your brain, your heart, and your medications, but the 5th sign is perhaps the most personal. I call it the 3-day recovery rule. In the airline industry, we have strict crew rest requirements. After a long-haul flight, the FAA mandates that flight crews have a specific number of hours of dead time to allow our bodies to recalibrate. Why? Because flying is a multi-sensory assault. The constant 80-decibel hum of the engines, the micro-vibrations of the fuselage, and the extreme dehydration of the cabin air, which is often drier than the Sahara Desert, take a toll on the nervous system. If you find that a simple 5-hour flight requires 3 days of recovery in bed, once you reach your destination, the travel cost has officially outweighed the travel joy. I remember a flight to Rome in late 2018. We had a wonderful couple, the Hendersons. They were celebrating their 50th anniversary. They had saved for years for this business class trip. When they landed, I saw them at the baggage carousel. Mr. Henderson looked like a ghost. He was so physically depleted by the pressure changes and the vibration fatigue that he could barely stand. I ran into them 3 days later near the Spanish Steps. I was on my layover, and they were finally leaving their hotel room for the first time. They had missed 3 days of their dream vacation just trying to get their bodies to stop shaking and their heads to stop spinning. Consultant advice: if your recovery ratio is 1.1 or worse, meaning 1 day of recovery for every 1 day of travel, you are overtaxing your longevity. From a financial standpoint, you are paying thousands of dollars for hotel rooms you are only using to sleep off a travel hangover. This is a sign that your body is no longer bouncing back because the physiological stress of altitude is too great. It's not a failure, it's a biological fact. For those of you who watched the first 5 signs and thought, "I'm not there yet, Elena, but I'm close," this is your golden ticket protocol. This is how we extend your wings for as long as safely possible. The Senior Flyer's Master Checklist. 1. The pre-flight stress test. 2 weeks before booking, spend 30 minutes at a local mall or park. Walk 500 steps. If you feel any chest tightness or brain fog, call your doctor before clicking Purchase. 2. The hydration multiplier. For every hour in the air, you must drink 8 ounces of water with electrolytes. Airplane air is dead air. You must keep your blood volume high to prevent fainting and DVT. 3. The aisles-only seating rule. After age 70, you no longer sit in a window seat. You need the freedom to stand and move every 45 minutes without asking permission. Movement is medicine. 4. The compression commandment. Medical-grade compression socks are non-negotiable. They are the life insurance for your legs. 5. The tech support audit. If you cannot navigate the airline's app on your own, you must hire a travel concierge or travel with a companion. Do not let terminal stress become a medical crisis. 6. The altitude clearance. Ask your doctor for a pulse oximetry test under exertion. If your oxygen levels dip below 92% on the ground, they will plummet in the air. And if the checklist tells you it's time to stay grounded, Then we look at the pivot. As a senior travel consultant, I often steer my clients toward luxury rail or river cruising. Why? Because you stay at sea level. Your cabin moves with you. There is no oxygen debt, no terminal fog, and a doctor is usually just a few decks away. You still see the world. You just do it with the wind in your hair instead of a mask on your face. Leaving the lead flight attendant life was hard. Those wings were my identity for 12 years. But I realized that I could do more good for you down here, sharing the secrets I learned up there. I want to be transparent with you, to keep bringing you these updates weekly while I'm busy consulting with families across the country. I use advanced technology to help me organize and share my 12 years of experience. It allows me to stay in the galley with you, even when I'm miles away, ensuring that this life-saving information is always polished and ready for your pre-flight briefing. Traveling after 70 is a privilege, not a race. If you saw yourself in those 5 signs today, don't be discouraged. Be empowered. You now have the lead flight attendant insight to make the smartest decision for your health. I want to hear from you. Have you noticed these signs in yourself or a loved one? Have you had a near miss in the air that changed how you travel? Please comment below. I read every single one, and your story might just save a fellow traveler's life. And if you want more Galley Talk and senior travel secrets, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're crossing an ocean or just crossing the state line, remember, your safety is your true destination. Your adventure is just beginning. Let's fly right.